All right, let's do this. I'm in the car again, and this is Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im with another impromptu talk. But I first have to concentrate on driving, as they always taught us when I got my pilot's license. I have a private pilot's license issued by the FAA. First, aviate, navigate, communicate. Any other pilots out there know exactly what I'm talking about. The first thing is make sure you're safe in your vehicle. So that's what I got to do. But now I'm back on the main road, and we can switch over to speaking some Torah. The motivation for my doing these impromptu talks is that a number of people, I used to do them on a regular basis, and a number of people requested that I bring them back, that I do them again. So that's what I'm trying to do, a bit more. Hold on, I have to navigate. 1 second here. Actually, I have to change the level of the air conditioning in the car. Okay, so that's the motivation for doing these impromptu talks. And what I'd like to talk about, I titled this talk the Topsy-turvy World of the Rabbis. And I don't even know exactly what I'm going to say yet. That's the whole idea of an impromptu talk. This is all completely off the cuff. But I want to tell you the motivation for doing this talk. There were actually a number of motivations. Okay, so topsy-turvy is my way of translating the phrase Olam Hafuch, which every Israeli or Hebrew speaker knows exactly what that means. Upside down world or topsy-turvy world. You know, those that are on the bottom should be on the top. Those that are on the top should be on the bottom. You know, the criminals are the kings and presidents, and the those who should be kings and presidents are considered the criminals and are imprisoned or downtrodden. So we live in a completely upside down world, which eventually will resolve itself. But again, my motivation for doing this talk was three things. So let me explain each thing in sequence. The first was a video that somebody sent me, and unfortunately, because I'm in the car, I can't replay it as part of. If I were on my computer right now, I could replay the video as part of this broadcast, but I can't do it while I'm in the car. So it was a video that somebody sent me. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cough, and hope I don't have coronavirus. It was a video that somebody sent me of a professor at Hebrew University, and I will provide a link to this video at the bottom because I posted it on my my Facebook wall. At any rate, a video that somebody sent of a professor at Hebrew University, professor of Jewish literature, whose expertise is from the time, I guess, of post Tanach. So I think starting with maybe I don't think it includes the Apocrypha, but starting with the Mishnah up through the Talmudic period, the Midrashic period, and maybe even into the later periods, such as what they call the Gaonim and the Rishonim and the Achonim, etc., etc. And basically, what this professor says, and he might also be a rabbi. I don't know if he's a rabbi or not, but he definitely is a Haredi because he dresses like a Haredi. Basically, what this professor says is, well, the interviewer, who's kind of just an average Israeli Jew, asks him. The professor says that the Even HaYesod, how do you translate that to English? The foundation stone of Judaism is this post-Tanachic literature, the Mishnah, the Talmud, etc. And the interviewer is a bit kind of puzzled, I guess, and he says, why do you say that? You say that this is the foundation stone of Judaism and not the Tanakh? And the professor says, yes, this is the foundation stone And he gives examples. He says, we're talking right now in Hebrew, but we're not speaking Tanachic Hebrew. We're speaking Rabbinical Hebrew, or Mishnaic Hebrew, or Talmudic Hebrew. We are the halacha that we keep is not Tanakhic halacha. It's rabbinical halacha, and he gives the exact example. He actually admits, and he says that in the Tanakh, whether you're a Jew or not goes by the father. He says it. This rabbinical Jew, this professor, admits it, and he says, but we go by the mother. So we're not keeping the Tanakh. We're not following Tanakhic halacha. We're following rabbinical halacha. Okay, well, it's finally good to hear a criminal admit his own crimes. So, hold on a second. So that made me think. I've over the years had to defend myself against, and not just me, this doesn't have to do with me per se, but many Karaites, if they're brave and they stand up for what they believe, have had to defend themselves over the years from being called a heretic, or an apikoros, or whatever the various words. There's so many words that one could be called, but basically a heretic who doesn't accept the rule or the reign or the sovereignty of what they call Chazal, of the rabbinites. Okay, and it just occurred to me, or it's occurred to me many times, but yesterday when I was listening to this video, it occurred to me again in a very kind of sharp way how ridiculous this is. What an upside down, what a topsy-turvy world we live in for anybody to accuse me, who clings to the Tanakh, as not being, or as not following Judaism, when in fact it's them who have created a completely new religion, a religion that in some ways, and this is one of the points I want to get into, is 180 degrees in opposition to what the Tanakh says. So it's just a completely upside down world, where we have so many Jews who are completely brainwashed. Okay, just as we have many people who are brainwashed today with the current situation going on. I won't get into it more than that, but many people are brainwashed where they see reality in a certain way, and it's just the complete opposite of what reality is. So I mean, the interview with this rabbi by this just average Israeli Jew who happened to be an interviewer, just points it out. The guy was kind of shocked, when the professor said, "Oh, we don't follow, we don't live our lives based on Tanakh. We live our lives based on the writings of the rabbis." So that was one incident. There was another incident. There's a rabbi I used to learn with many years ago, and I have a fair amount of respect for the guy in certain ways. He's definitely an outside of the box thinker, but not really outside of the box enough. And one of the things, I'm not going to mention his name, Amivin Yavin, and one of the things that defines this rabbi is his arrogance. He's such an arrogant ass. I mean, the guy is just completely arrogant, very intelligent, but extremely arrogant. And I almost can't stand listening to him, but I do, just because I like to see how somebody who is so sure of themselves can be so wrong, and so smug and secure in their way of seeing things can be so completely wrong, at least in my opinion. So there's this, he does many videos, but there's one video of him sitting in his sukkah with a tefillin on his head, okay, because he wears tefillin throughout the day, and he says he's sitting there and he's speaking these words which just seem like words of wisdom. And all I could think to myself is, what a fool, what an absolute ass and fool and idiot this guy looks like, in at least my eyes, and I believe the eyes of any normal human being, and in the eyes of Yehovah himself. What a fool this person looks like, with his ridiculous heathen amulets on his head, sitting in the sukkah, thinking that he's somehow following the word of the Tanakh, the word of Yehovah, when in fact he just looks like a complete fool. It's just such a dichotomy between what this person thinks of himself as a wise man and what a fool he looked like in my eyes, with these ridiculous amulets, which the rabbis called tefillin, on his head, sitting in his sukkah on Chol HaMoed, thinking that he's such a wise man and such a righteous man for putting the dumb black boxes on his head, where they're not even prescribed at all in the Tanakh, and contrasting this to the way that I and other Karaites, again, I'm not singling myself out, anyone who takes a stand and who attempts to follow the ways of the Torah, the way that we've been criticized or ostracized for not wanting to wear these things, as if we're not the real Jews. Okay. By the way, as I always point out, I was born 100% Jewish. Both my parents are 100% Jewish. I'm 100%. I'm about as Ashkenazi Jewish as you can get from both sides of my family, as far back as I've been able to trace. There's no Gerim even in either side of my family. At any rate, so that's neither here nor there. But the point is that I am considered somehow anathema, or or an outcast, or someone who's not following Judaism correctly, for not wanting to put these ridiculous, excuse me, 1 second, these ridiculous amulets on my head. And this person is Chacham be'enav. He's a wise man in his own eyes, and he sits there and he has all the airs, and he has the long beard, and sits there and acts like a wise man. And I'm looking at this guy, and he's just a fool. He looks like a complete idiot, sitting there with these stupid boxes on his head, thinking what a wise man he is. And again, this just reminded me of what an Olam Hafuch we live in. Okay, how Rabbinical Judaism, so many things, but in the case of in respect to charism, how Rabbinical Judaism has taken over as this normative Judaism, and it's actually such a departure from what the Torah and what the Tanakh tells us to do. But people are so brainwashed, they're so fearful and so brainwashed and such sheep that they just have to go with the flow, and it's almost like a mass psychosis. Again, what's happening today in our current society regarding certain current events, like the pandemic, also shows that there's a mass psychosis. So it's almost like Rabbinical Judaism is a mass psychosis, that these people who are actually violating the Torah, violating the Tanakh, in their own eyes, think that by clinging to the Torah and the Tanakh, which I don't do perfectly, far from it, every day, I realize my own flaws, my own shortcomings. I realize, every day that maybe I understood this law incorrectly and I should revise my own opinion of that law. It's constantly evolving, but at least I'm making an honest effort to follow the Torah and to follow the Tanakh. And I think that when my life comes to an end and I stand before my Creator, before Yehovah, He will know that. He will know that my heart was pure. At least I believe it is. And my heart was straight, and my heart was in the right place. And it's just amazing to see that the world is just taken over, the Jewish world is taken over by this mass psychosis, this insanity, where these people think that they're somehow following the word of God, and those who cling to the Tanakh, quote unquote Karaites, are not. Okay, and even more so, they're so arrogant about it. They create all of these, these intellectual kind of structures. The oral law was a development, and I don't know, I can't even think of other ones, but there's so many that I've heard over the years where they just intellectualize it and they come up with all these theories, and they sound almost like college professors because they're justifying nonsense, and they ridicule and look down on people who see the Tanakh in a straightforward, or try to see the Tanakh and the Torah in a straightforward way, as the Karaite is meant to do. Doesn't mean that the Torah and the Tanakh is easy to understand, but it's straightforward. The laws of the Torah and the Tanakh were laws that were given to all of Am Yisrael, right? You don't have to go across the sea to bring it back. You don't have to you should not ask who shall go to the heavens to bring it back. It is close to us in our hearts and in our mouths, right? That's, I would say, one of the foundational principles of charism, one of the foundational verses in the Tanach, in the Torah of charism. So let me just move lanes. Again, as I said, I have to also drive a car while I'm doing this, so excuse me. And so we have all this Olam Hafuch. We have this topsy-turvy, this upside-down world, in so many ways, where those who don't follow Tanakh, where they absolutely violate the Torah, are considered somehow the intellectual elite of Judaism, who've created, understand something that we don't understand. Oh, we have to study Talmud. Oh, we have to study Gemara in order to understand what they understand. And it's almost a circular reasoning. You can't, until you agree with them, then you haven't studied Gemara enough, right? They'll say, "Oh, the reason you're saying such, stupid things as a Karaite is, you haven't studied enough. You have to study more Talmud." Okay. So I'll go study Talmud. I have, many times, and I'll come back and I'll say, you know what? Well, this doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense. So now I've studied Talmud, and I still think the whole thing is baloney. And they'll say, "Oh, you have to go back and study more. You haven't studied enough." So the idea is you have to study Talmud enough until you agree with them, and then that's a sign that you've studied Talmud enough. You haven't studied enough until you 100% agree with them. So it's almost a circular reasoning. I think it's called, I found out the other day, it's called what is this called again? The True Scotsman fallacy. I won't get into it, but you can look it up. It's the same idea. You're not you look it up, okay? At any rate, that is the other thing that galvanized me to do this talk. So we have two things so far. We have the professor who sat there and basically admitted outright that he does not follow the Tanakh, or he does not consider the Tanakh to be the basis of Judaism. He considers the writings of quote-unquote Chazal to be the basis of Judaism. And then we have this arrogant rabbi who thinks of himself as the wisest man in the world. No one else could possibly be as wise as him. He's wise as him, and there he is sitting on Chol Hamoed in his sukkah with his stupid tefillin on his head, thinking he looks like a wise man. And all I could say is, I'm trying to put myself in the eyes of God, looking down from heaven. God forbid, I'm not, but I'm trying to put myself in his eyes for a second, and just saying this, he must look at this guy and think he's an utter fool. The guy looks like an utter fool. I mean, he goes to the store with these stupid amulets on his head. I mean, how is he gonna, how would he, run a marathon or ride a bike or do any kind of normal exercise or carry on any kind of normal job with these stupid things on his head? At any rate, he's just sitting there thinking of himself as such a wise man, and he just looks like an utter fool. Okay, and then the next thing, the third thing that galvanized me is the current situation. And I don't want to get into it too much, but there's a mass psychosis going on in this day and age where people are just completely brainwashed through fear into believing certain things that I certainly don't believe, and that any normal person and many normal people I've met do not believe. I'm going to leave it at that for various technical reasons. But again, Mevin Yavin, he who understands, understands. So I wanted to give an example of some examples of how Rabbinical Judaism, since this first professor, he was kind of almost proud, or almost saying, outright, without any shame or any embarrassment whatsoever, that he doesn't follow the Tanakh, that he follows the laws of Chazal, the writings of the laws of Chazal. I wanted to give some examples of how Rabbinical Judaism is not just different from Tanakh, but it's 180 degrees diametrically opposed to the Tanakh. The first example would be what this professor himself said, which is that it's very clear, and I've now been studying this for years and years, it's very clear that whether you are an Israelite or not goes by the father and not by the mother. There are a couple of responses that the Rabbinites give to this, which I won't get into right now because it would involve going into the text itself, and I don't have it in front of me since I'm driving. But suffice to say that all of these the responses of the rabbis, or all of the so-called proofs of the rabbis, are ridiculous proofs. Okay, we could talk about one very briefly, which is the in the book of Ezra. It speaks about how Ezra told the Israelites, the Jews who had married foreign women, to send away their wives and their children, and the rabbis will often use this as a proof that goes to show that if the children had to be sent away, they were then they were not Jewish, they were not Israelites. Okay, so it goes by the mother and not by the father. And again, I think this is a kind of a ridiculous example, because number one, these were Canaanites. Okay, the Jews were never supposed to intermarry with the Canaanites. It's explicit in the Torah that you're not to intermarry with a Canaanite, lest what does it say again? His daughter teach you. I forgot. I can't remember the verse in front of me. But you're not supposed to intermarry with Canaanites at all. And I think that's the understanding of that verse right there. Okay, which is that these marriages were never supposed to happen at all. And number two, Ezra was the ruler at the time, so he kind of made the decision based on the situation at hand. Okay, he saw that maybe that what was going on is that these women and their children were influencing negatively the overall reestablished Jewish society in the land of Israel. Okay. So let's leave it at that. We also know that, well, let's see, this example would work. I'll just leave it at that, because to go more deep into it, I would have to have the text in front of me. Okay, so the main point here is that it's clear from the Torah, it's clear from the Tanach, that everything goes by the father, none goes by the mother. But the Rabbinites, they changed it. They made it 180 degrees in opposition, and they determine whether you're a Jew, whether you're an Israelite or not, by the mother and not by the father. So they 100%, 180 degrees, almost as if they're defying God deliberately. Okay, almost as if they're a cult, right? One of the things that a cult does is again turn reality on its head. It turns your world into a topsy-turvy world, into an Olam, Hafuch. So it's almost like, one second here. It's almost like that's what the rabbis are doing. They're creating a cult by brainwashing people, so much so that they turn reality on its head. Or maybe they're enjoying the power they have over people's minds, that they can completely turn the Torah and the Tanach on its head and still have people follow them. Okay, I'll give you another clear example in the Torah of how the rabbis turned everything turned something not just a little bit different, but 180 degrees in opposition of what the Torah says, and that's of course the New Year. The rabbis believe that the New Year is in the fall. In other words, what they call Rosh Hashanah, what we call Yom Teruah, and of course it says in Exodus chapter 12 verse 2 that this shall be the first month for you. In other words, the Chodesh of the Aviv shall be the first month for you, and that of course is in the spring. And again, when you ask the rabbis how they justify such a thing, well, they point to their Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, or the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, which says there are actually 4 New Years, and one of those 4 New Years, it happens to be the first of Nisan, according to them. I think it's the New Year of Kings. This is the first Mishnah in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and so it's not really a contradiction to the Torah, to the Tanach. But of course it is, because their main new year, the new year by which they basically count, 1 second please, the new year by which basically they count the year is in the fall. Okay, now if you look at it, the real new year of the Torah is the first month, what we call the first month, what we might call these days Nisan, and the rabbinical new year is the 7th month, Tishrei. That's exactly 180 degrees, 6 months in, or I should say 180 days, or half of 365, approximately 180 days, basically 6 months in opposition to what the Torah says. The Torah says, first of Nisan, again, I'm going to use the Babylonian names for the months, just to, for point of reference here. The Torah says the first of Nisan in Exodus 12:2, and the rabbis say the first of Tishrei. 6 months later, the absolute opposite point, the point of opposition on the yearly calendar from what the Torah says. So, rabbis are not just disobeying the Torah; they're completely turning the world upside down. They're completely turning the Torah upside down, and they're creating a new religion which is in 100%, 180 degree opposition to the true Torah. Those are two good examples. There are other examples, but I'll just leave it at those two. And why do they do this? I think it's, again, arrogance. I think it's the way of a cult that they like to see their power over people by brainwashing people into their way of seeing the world, which is 180 degrees in opposition of reality. Reality, Israelite, is determined by the father. The rabbinical situation, or the rabbinical quote-unquote reality, is determined by the mother. The reality in the Torah, the first day of the year, is in the spring, Nisan, quote-unquote. The rabbinical quote-unquote reality, the first day of the year, is in Tishrei, 6 months later, in complete opposition to what the Torah says. So they're almost like daring God. They're almost like taunting God, like, come do something about it. They don't even believe in God, these people. Explicitly so, all right? The whole story of the Tanur Achnai, which also is bandied about a lot in Karaite circles, shows the same thing, right? That it's more important what the rabbis say than what God himself says. God is secondary. That's a polite way of saying we don't even believe in God. We do whatever the heck we want. We don't even really believe in God. And many years ago, when I was hanging around with religious Jews, especially Haredim, I have to say, there were many that when I would speak to them, I really got the idea they don't even really believe in God. They certainly don't believe in what they're living. They're kind of just forced into it because it's the only way they can survive. But I get the feeling they don't even really believe in God. Some of them, not all of them. Some do. There's some wonderful Haredim. I don't want to cast aspersions on the entire, community, because there are some wonderful, wonderful Haredim who are just, they're almost like Karaites in a certain sense, although they don't follow the Karaite way. At any rate, so Olam Hafuch, an upside down, a topsy-turvy world, once again. So I think that is kind of the main message that I wanted to get out today. I have a little bit of a cold, I have a little bit of cough, so excuse me if I'm a bit stuffed up. But the main message that I want to get out is that there's so many examples of a topsy-turvy world, of an upside-down world. The first example being this professor who admitted outright that Judaism is not based on Tanach. The second being this rabbi who thinks himself as an extremely wise man, and I just looked at this video of him, and all I could think of is, God, this guy looks like a complete fool. And and the third being the current situation that we are in, the current pandemic situation, where so many people are brainwashed and seeing the world in a completely different way from the way that I see it, and I think that many normal people see it, and I'll leave it at that. And then I gave the examples of how the Rabbinical Judaism is 180 degrees in opposition to what the Torah and the Tanakh says, and then I'll mention one or two other points. Right. Another point is that a polemic that I heard a long time ago. I believe it's of the Karaite Daniel Al-Kumisi, if I'm not mistaken. and but it might have been thrown around by a number of Karaite commentators, is he compares the Rabbinites to Yerovam. Okay, so Yerovam was the king who broke away from Rehovam, from Solomon's son Rehovam, and founded the northern kingdom. Basically, he led to the split of the united kingdom of Israel into the southern kingdom Judah and the northern kingdom Israel after the death of Solomon. And what did he do? Yerovam, one of the first things he did is he set up golden calves. It's in the Tanach in First Kings. He set up golden calves in Dan and Bethel. Okay, in Dan and Bethel. So Dan up in the north, Bethel down, basically right above the territory of Judah. Now Bethel has great importance. Bethel, we've been studying in the recent Parshiot. The recent Parshas is the place where Jacob had his dream. You know, Jacob's ladder, the angels descending up and down on his way out of the land of Canaan, leaving his father's house Yitzhak, and he basically made an oath to God, basically saying that Yehovah would be his God, and he would be his servant. And then when he came back after 20 years with Lavan, when he came back, one of the places he stopped on his way back down to his father Yitzhak, who was in, I believe, Beersheba, maybe Hebron at the time. At any rate, stopped at Bethel and sacrificed again, kind of renewed the oath, shall we say. So Bethel has great importance in the history of our people. It's basically a place, can be considered almost a holy place, right? It's Yaakov says that it's that this is the house of God, so he names it Bethel. Bethel means the house of God, and the Sha'ar Shamayim, and the gate to heaven. Okay, so I've covered this a lot in the weekly Torah study, so I'm not going to delve into it more there. But what did Yerovam do? He set up the golden calf in Dan and in Bethel, in this kind of holy place, in the history of our people. And the other thing he did is he set up a holiday, an 8-day holiday starting on the 15th day of the 8th month. Well, we have an 8-day holiday starting on the 15th day of the 7th month. It's called Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret, if you want to consider them together. So what Yerovam did is make it on the 8th month. Okay, he basically violated the Torah like the rabbis and made his own holiday, and so he made places of worship which were golden calves instead of in Jerusalem, which by that time had already been chosen as the place where God would let his name rest, or where God would place his name, right? So he was in direct violation. He made another religion. He made a new religion which seemed like the religion of Torah, which seemed like the religion of Tanach, but in fact it was just a facsimile. It was similar in certain ways, right? There was a 8-day holiday starting on the 15th of a month, and there were places of worship in places that had holy or that had significance in the history of our people. But it was a completely different holiday. It was something different, right? Or it was a completely different religion. So Kumisi compares or uses this analogy to speak about the rabbis. They made kind of a parallel religion which seems close to Torah, seems close to Tanakh. Intellectually, with their elitism and their arrogance, they could kind of defend it to brainwashed and stupid people how it is Torah and is Tanakh, and really is the oral law is really a development, and we can't we're not driving riding around an oxen today, and what do you want to do? You want to cut people's hands off or something like that? Doesn't say that in the Tanakh, obviously. Doesn't even say that in the Quran, but it's interpreted that way by some. At any rate, So the point being that this is what the rabbis have done. They very cleverly created a new religion, which is kind of a parallel religion to Torah and Tanakh. It seems, or can, to the brainwashed and to the stupid, can be defended as the religion of the Torah and Tanakh, or in some cases, as that professor admitted blatantly, outright, it has nothing to do with Torah and Tanakh. It's its own religion. We don't follow Torah. We don't follow Tanakh. We follow the rabbis. This professor said outright. And this is what the rabbis have done. The rabbis have done exactly what Yerovam did when he broke away from the southern kingdom and created his own religion, set up his golden calves, made his own holiday on the 8th day, on the 15th day of the 8th month. So this is what we have. We have an upside down world. We have a topsy-turvy world, but it's going to resolve itself in the end. Okay, I know for myself. I've identified as Karaite now for 20 years, basically, and I've never wavered from it, not even for a second. And believe me, it's caused me a lot of problems in my life, a lot of arguments, a lot of rejection, a lot of being ostracized a lot of all this kind of stuff. But you know what? I know in the end that my heart is in the right place, with all my flaws and with all the mistakes I've made, and with all the perhaps the misinterpretations, with all my lack of understanding lacks of understanding of various things in the Torah and the Tanakh. I know that my heart is in the right place, and that I am making a true effort to follow the Torah and follow the Tanakh, and that's more than I can say of the rabbis, the rabbinites, and those who follow them. Unfortunately, those who follow them are just the brainwashed masses for the most part, or they're just too scared to too much of cowards. They're cowards. They can't stand up for what they really believe in. Maybe they're afraid they're going to be rejected by their families. They're not going to have a good job. They're not going to be part of a community. They're not going to have the right, shidduch, whatever the case may be. They're cowards at the end of the day. And I refuse to be a coward, no matter what the consequences are. I'll stick to what I believe. I'll stick to Yehovah. I'll stick to the Torah. And I'll stick to the Tanakh. And the Olam Hafuch that exists right now will die in the end. Yehovah will foment a revolution one way or another, and it will overthrow all of the lies and all of the falseness that we see in the world right now. And I will be proud to be part of that revolution. With that in mind, this is Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov saying goodbye, and wishing you all a nice day. And if you have anything to say, you can always comment below this video. So I'm going to end the video. Shalom, shalom.